or objection? Chair hears none. On this question being 30 yeas, 4 nays, 0 absent not voting, more than 2/3 of those elected having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill effective from passage. Clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 285, eliminating West Virginia Greyhound Breeding Development Fund. The bill was advanced to third reading with the right to amend.
Are there amendments to the bill?
Yes, sir. Senator Blair moved to amend the bill on page 5, section 3, line 60, after line 59, by inserting the following: for obtaining veterinary services documented by veterinary reports.
Recognize the senior senator from the 15th.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent to explain the amendment in lieu of having it read.
It was just read.
Mr. President, the amendment is technical only, and I urge adoption.
The question for the Senate is adoption of the amendment as offered by the senior senator from the 15th. Is there discussion? I'll recognize the senior senator from the 15th for discussion.
Mr. President, this amendment is technical only, and I urge adoption.
Is there further discussion? Not. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Declare the amendment adopted. Are there further amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
Not. The bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading. Clerk will please read the bill a third time.
Engrossed committee substitute for Senate Bill 285, eliminating West Virginia Greyhound Breeding Development Fund. Third reading of the bill.
The question before the Senate is, shall the bill pass? Is there discussion? The senior senator from the 15th.
Thank you, Mr. President. The purpose of Senate Bill 285 is to end the state funding for Greyhound racing industry and to provide that pre-existing casinos in the state with live dog racing will no longer be required to conduct live racing to maintain their licensure or to conduct certain types of lottery games. The bill grants a $500 one-time tax exemption beginning after July the 1st, 2021 for adoption of a greyhound from a licensed greyhound breeder or from an entity such as the Humane Society, which promotes adoptions of the displaced greyhounds. The tax exemption has a sunset date of July the 1st of 2023. The bill also provides for a redirection of funds and sets out that the effective date being July the 1st of 2020, and the amount required to be deposited in the Greyhound Breeding Development Fund be redirected to the State Excess Lottery Revenue Fund. There would be a positive impact on revenue should this bill pass. The Racing Commission estimates that would be $17,400,000 upon full implementation. For the first 2 years, there are some funds that are diverted for time-limited programs. Upon termination of the funds, the Racing Commission will withhold $1 million to transfer to a special account to facilitate care for and the adoption of greyhounds in no-kill animal shelters. Additionally, upon termination of the fund, the Racing Commission will withhold $3 million to transfer to a special account allocated to Workforce West Virginia to retrain workers with a direct relationship to the greyhound racing industry who are displaced. Both of these programs will be sunset on July the 1st, 2022. There you have it, Mr. President.
Is there further discussion? Further discussion?
Is there further discussion? The chair recognizes the senator from Jackson County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wanted to rise and talk about this bill just for a moment. It's a bill that I've sponsored it in the past. We've actually passed it prior to this today, but I can, sort of see where this is going to go. But I wanted to talk about it because whether we do it this year or next year or the year after, it's going to happen. Greyhound racing is ending all across America. There's only a few handful of states that even allow it legally to occur, and we're the only state in America that subsidizes the activity. And there's lots of reasons that people across America are turning away from this sport, if we want to call it a sport. And you've heard many of them. A lot of it has to do with the treatment of the animals and so forth and the degree. In fact, I'm told through the Racing Commission that one greyhound dies on average every 10 days at the 2 tracks in West Virginia. Now, those are the statistics from the State Racing Commission. And there's a lot of injuries associated with it and so forth, but beyond that, I understand the concern about the jobs and the activities that are associated with it, but I wanted to provide you, and you have it on your desk, the current lottery flow, and then the flow upon passage of this bill, which will drop $17 million down to the excess lottery fund. And I just thought it was instructive for us to think about what we did yesterday on the floor of this Senate. We adopted 3 supplemental bills, supplemental appropriations from the excess lottery fund. And yesterday there was $20 million that went to the Public Defender's Fund. There was $5 million that went to the DHHR for medical services. And there was $4.5 million that went for veterans assistance to the Clarksburg Nursing Facility. These are just some of the utilizations of those excess lottery funds that would be available upon passage of this bill for us to allocate to the priorities that we deem are the highest use and the best use of state funds. Now, I hear a lot of talk about, this is their money. This is their money. It's not their money. And I just proved it from yesterday. We just allocated excess lottery funds yesterday, over almost $30 million. So it's taxpayer money. This may, a vote today will determine your prioritization on whether or not to utilize these funds to continue Greyhound racing. That's the choice that we have. I thought it was important to have this vote today. And as I say, I'm not going to give one of those type speeches that shames anyone. We shouldn't be ashamed of these votes that we make. But I want to say, eventually, West Virginia, one more time, is an outlier in this and many other areas. And we're just trying to get us to recognize that across America, this activity is in decline, drastic decline. It's being outlawed in many other venues, and this state will have 2 of the remaining 5 tracks in America. So I just wanted to say those are the reasons that I wanted to introduce this bill from, it's 2 reasons, twofold. The aspect of the activity itself, the effect on the animals and so forth, and I know many of you have visited some of these kennels and it seemed to be, a good treatment. But those are statistics. Those are the statistics that come to us from the Racing Commission. And then secondly, the prioritization of our state funding. We have a lot of needs in this state, and you can imagine all the different needs that these funds could be utilized for. So it's for those reasons that I stand in strong support of this bill, and I thank you for your time. Thank you, Mr. President.
Question for the Senate is on passage of the bill. Are there other senators who desire to speak to the bill? Chair recognizes the senator from Brooke County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I had a lot of remarks prepared today, but I thought maybe I wouldn't really go through them all. But I just wanted to stand up in response to some of the remarks that were just made. This morning at 11:17 a.m., I received an email from the State Racing Commission. And they directly contradict the numbers that we just heard regarding fatalities in the greyhound industry. the number that was given was the one every 10 days. But the numbers that I was given by the Racing Commission this morning, like I said, at 11:17, was that in 5 years, unfortunately, and this is, I mean, I'm not making light of this, but in 5 years, there have been 69 dog fatalities. And so that, again, that comes directly from the Racing Commission. So the every 10 days doesn't add up, but I'm happy to look at any contradicting figures. To say that this is an industry in decline, I think is a little bit of a misnomer. In 2010, the total handle that was gambled on greyhounds was $92 million. In 2019, it was $124 million. That's an increase of 34%. And so even if you say, well, you're trying to go back for a very long period of time to cherry pick your numbers, I'll just go back to 2015. And in 2015, it was 104 million. Now it's 124 million. So that's still an increase of 19%. But one thing that I wanted to compare and contrast it to is we also have horse racing in the state of West Virginia. And so in West Virginia in 2010, there was a $414 million difference between horses and dogs. That difference now, in 2019, is $201 million. Over the past 10 years, the horse racing industry in the state has seen a $35% decrease in total handle gambled. So greyhound racing has seen a 34% increase. Horse racing is seeing a 35% decrease. And so I struggle with the industry on decline label for greyhound racing. I have been to a kennel. I went with my wife back in December. And I think by now people know that I'm either famously or infamously known for introducing the shelter dog resolution here in the Senate. And so obviously dogs are very important to me. And so we were very surprised by what we found in the kennel, the way that the dogs lived, the way that they were treated, the disposition of the dogs. I was very surprised by all that. And because I thought, well, if I'm going to get behind this bill on the opposite side of it, to vote against this bill, I want to make sure that the dogs are treated well. And so that kennel visit did a lot for me. When we talk about the treatment of the dogs, that was part of what we heard about. There's an outside organization that is heavily involved in this. They have nothing to do with the state of West Virginia. They're not located in the state of West Virginia. Their only ties to West Virginia are their lobbyists that they've hired here. They were involved in outlawing racing in Florida. They were then played no part in the adoption of the dogs in the industry afterwards. They were not allowed to play a role whatsoever in that. And in fact, the quote that we heard from the head of that organization was, "Our ability to help with adoption domestically is in doubt." So that they have no plan to help if this bill were to pass. They have no plan whatsoever if this bill were to pass to help with the dogs. My wife and I have a better plan because of that kennel visit. I'm now adopting a greyhound that is retiring. So Alex and I have a better plan than the organization from outside of the state that wants to end racing here. And that is frustrating to me because they seem to care about the dogs but are allowed no role whatsoever and play no role whatsoever in finding them all homes. So I just wanted to address a couple of the discussion points. I think it's obvious that myself and the Senate President are on different sides of this issue, but I think that also speaks to the strength of the Senate and what it is, because at the end of the day, our varying positions don't affect the way that we operate together, our relationship, and how the Senate operates. And I think that speaks volumes to the way that the Senate operates. And I also think that it shows that when two different sides of the aisle come together on an issue, perhaps a lot can be accomplished. And so I'm proud of the way that the Senate has operated on this piece of legislation as well. So I would urge a no vote on this. Thank you, Mr. President.
Further discussion? Recognize the senator from Harrison County.
Thank you, Mr. President. You know, I stood here and listened to my colleague from Jackson, and I was a little surprised. I thought we were on a rocket ship. I thought the economy was doing so great that priorities would have allowed us to make this decision without considering the additional revenues. We just passed the Intermediate Court of Appeals bill, a court which nobody thinks is necessary except my colleagues across the aisle there. It's going to cost us several $1 million a year. I don't know where that falls within the priorities. No pun intended, but I don't have a dog in this hunt. My county doesn't have dogs, doesn't have horses. But I will tell you this, that any athletic endeavor involving animals, there's risks. How many horses die every year? I don't see anybody tremendously concerned about those animals. But what we ought to be concerned about is cutting the legs out from under an industry at the drop of a hat. This industry employs thousands of people, direct and indirect jobs. It supports, up in the northern panhandle, the city of Wheeling. And you're talking about, because we're worried about our economic status now, and evidently the budget, given all of the sweeps we did yesterday to help balance the budget. Not a lot of talk about that. But obviously the budget's in some kind of trouble. But this is not a good reason to get rid of dog racing. Revenues are up. Everybody else is getting out of it. Sometimes a monopoly can be exploited. But if we end dog racing now, we'll never know if that's possible. 28% jump in revenues. My friend from Brook just said it. That's a huge change because everybody else is getting out of it. It deserves a chance. I don't know whether it's right or wrong to race dogs. Never been to a dog track. I've talked to my friends who've been to the kennels and who've been to the track, and they say dogs are treated tremendously. You know, as a county commissioner, I ran the animal control center. You want to see dogs getting treated bad? Go to your local animal control center. That's where the problem really lies with dogs. But let me tell you, we've got children starving in this state. We got kids who rely on the money we appropriate to eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and we don't do enough of that. And we're worried about things that don't amount to a whole lot. For some reason, people have changed back and forth. But you know what? I'm concerned about our employees. I'm concerned what could be a good industry for us in the future, and I think a no vote's appropriate on this bill.
Other members desiring to speak to the bill recognize the senator from Ohio County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to stand up in strong opposition to this bill and strong opposition to the elimination of this industry. I've lived in Wheeling all my life, raised my family there. My father raised me there. My grandfather was the mayor of Wheeling back in the 60s. He raised his family there. City of Wheeling has had some ups and downs over time, and we've had some good things happen lately, but we've also had some bad things happen. We had a hospital close recently, Ohio Valley Medical Center. Same company that owns the hospital in Fairmont shut down our hospital in Wheeling. It was a huge blow. And we had our city manager testify before Senate Finance the other day, a city manager from Wheeling, and talked about how this bill would be catastrophic to the city of Wheeling. As you've heard, this money helps to fund the police and fire pensions in the city. It's a huge part, this track is a huge part of the TIF district. We can't afford to take another blow like this right now in the city of Wheeling, despite some of the good things that are going on. I'm optimistic about the future of Wheeling, but I don't want to see this happen to the city of Wheeling right now we can't absorb this blow right now. Let me talk also about the treatment of the dogs. I had the opportunity last weekend to visit the shelter in Brooke County, and Senator Weld was there. The senator from Brooke County was there at the same time, and boy, was I impressed. I'm a dog guy. I've got 2 dogs at home, 2 puppies. They are 50% poodle and 50% Bernese Mountain Dog. They're known as Bernie Doodles. I always wanted the chance to talk about them here on the Senate floor, so here I have the opportunity to talk about Bettis and Stella. I love them to death. They are 100% unconditional love whenever I come home on Friday night after a long week in Charleston. And prior to Bettis and Stella, we've had other dogs in our home. We lost 2 dogs last year, and so it's always tough when that happens. But we love them, and they love us. And I would not be advocating for this industry if I thought the dogs weren't treated well. When I visited the kennel last Saturday, I couldn't believe the lives that they lead. Their lives are much better than the lives my dogs lead. They're around all their friends all day long. They get to play 6 or 7 times a day and go out and go to their run and play with other dogs. They have nutrition certainly better than my dogs and better than most dogs. They are cared for and given attention all day long. When it's time to go from Brooke County down to Wheeling to race, they bring out these green leads. The dogs go crazy. They're so excited that they're going to get to go and race. And then when they come back, and I was there when the dogs came back from having just raced. In fact, a dog who had won the race walks in the door. They're wagging their tails. They're excited to see me and the senator from Brooke County and his wife and others. They were just so excited, like they were telling us what they had just done. Like they were saying, you won't believe what happened. We were just down the road at this track, and we ran around really fast, and we chased a rabbit, and now we're back. I mean, it was just very clear that these dogs have a life that's pretty darn good. And I don't dispute the fact that dogs sometimes are injured during these races and sometimes die, but there are certainly risks in any type of athletic endeavor. But I'm very comfortable in advocating for this industry based upon how these dogs are treated. The economic impact to the city of Wheeling and the region is more than just those pensions and the TIF. It's also the pickup trucks that the kennel owners purchase from local car dealerships. They purchase $55,000 diesel pickup trucks from the local car dealer. They purchase gasoline from the diesel gas from the gasoline stations up and down Route 2 in either Brooke or Ohio counties. They buy hay locally for the dogs. They buy dog food locally, so that the economic impact is substantial. And I'll end with this, and following up on the comments from my friend from Harrison County. There aren't many industries in our state that we control that is ours alone, and we're getting close to being the only game in town when it comes to this industry. The handle is up. There's $400 million in dog betting money available to capture from the state of Florida. Instead of kicking this to the curb, we ought to embrace it. We ought to modernize it. We ought to make it even better and allow even more people to send money to West Virginia. And as a legislature, we need to do a better job of capturing more of that revenue, because as we've all said we need to diversify our economy. And here we are with an opportunity to take an industry and make it even better and continue that diversification process. We'd be fools to let this industry go when there's such a great opportunity on the horizon. Thank you, Mr. President.
Other members desiring to speak to the bill? Recognize the senior senator from the 6th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Would the senator from Ohio yield?
Does the senator yield?
Sir.
Senator does yield.
I'm sorry. This senator from Brooke, I'm so sorry. So sorry, senator from Brooke.
Oh, senator from Brooke yield. Senator does yield.
Senator, thank you. You mentioned the $90 million and $100 million figures. Do you have an idea of the total payout and then also the overhead that is incurred? That's a number I've been trying to get for about 2 years.
I don't have, those numbers may be contained within the reports that are put out by the Racing Commission each year. I don't know if they are or not. I just had the numbers that I have were the total handles, the total number gambled.
And is that 90 and $100 million figures, is that just for Greyhound and no other handle figures, period? That's only Greyhound?
Well, I cited both the Greyhound and the Thoroughbred numbers, if I can, so the most recent from the 2019 accounting report that was done by the Racing Commission, the total handle for Greyhounds was 124 million, and then the total for Thoroughbreds was 325 million. So they're separate.
So with that $100 million figure, you know, if the payout was $100 million and then their overhead was $17 million, it'd basically be a wash. Would you agree to that?
I mean, if that was, but I mean, I don't know what the number is. I mean, it's probably contained within the Racing Commission report.
Yeah.
I just didn't have that number. I just had the total handle.
Yeah, okay, so, all right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Are there other members desiring to speak to the bill? Recognize the senator from Tucker County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I don't have a dog in the fight, pun intended, but I've voted twice over the years since I've been in the legislature to do away with dog racing, and it was vetoed both times. And since then, I guess I've educated myself and became a more humane person when it comes to people's life, their jobs. And, you know, this here in the especially the last couple of weeks, I've talked to a lot of people who works for the industry. And it seems like as a state, we're always willing to take someone else's job away but our own, or from our own area. Look at southern West Virginia. Well, you know, what's happened to the coal industry, or, you know, it's not all, I mean, you know, it's a lot of it's a sign of the times, but most of it happened because of out-of-state people decided, you know, it was not good. I'm not going to get into that. This isn't a coal issue, but I'm just saying it doesn't bother people to take people's jobs, it seems like, and put people in poverty, and then we come down here and spend 60 days trying to figure out how to get people out of poverty. You know, I have a real problem. I don't look, at first I was looking at this as a subsidy or, you know, as a government handout, but after educating myself on it, talking to people, and it's not really, it's not a government handout. I mean, it's money. Yes, it's money that if we do away with it, will go into the excess lottery fund. You know, I'm against gambling myself. If it was up to me, we'd do away with gambling, because I've had a lot of co-workers and know a lot of people that it's an addiction, but we're not here to fight over whether we want gambling or not, because I'm totally against gambling. But I am for preserving people's jobs. We have a problem. We're always trying to create jobs, but it seems like we're never trying to protect jobs. And we treat other industries a whole lot better than we do dog industries. For one example, you guys are probably getting tired of hearing me talk about the windmills, but we give them $9 million a year tax breaks for less than 100 jobs, right around 29 jobs to be exact, the last numbers I had. We give them $9 million of tax breaks. 70% of that is on the county that we voted. And 70% of that money the counties would receive, and out of the 70% that the counties would receive, education would receive 70% of that. But we don't have any problem keeping that, and that's been in place for 20 years. That we've passed it out of this body 3 times. It didn't come out this year, and I don't think it will ever come out. But I'm just using that as a comparison. It's all right to give one industry a $9 million break. They create 29 jobs, but then we're trying to take away, $7 million? And do away with, you know, maybe someone has told me the 1,700 jobs is exaggerated. Well, let's say it's half of that. It's still a big deal. It's a big deal to those people that's going to lose their jobs. You know, I've been there. I know what it's like to lose a job. I've been laid off, and it puts a burden on you and your family, you know. And just in good faith, like I said, I've voted for this twice, And in good conscience, in good conscience, I just can't vote to do away with these people's jobs. I don't agree with what the gambling of it. I get that, and you know, a lot of people here do, but to me, I'm looking at the jobs, the people that we're going to unemploy if we do this. Maybe not tomorrow, it won't happen tomorrow, next week, maybe next, but eventually we're doing away with their jobs is the bottom line. And until we put all of our industries on an equal playing field and try to move the state forward, I just can't vote for it this time. So thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. For other members desiring to speak to the bill? Not, question for the Senate is, shall the bill pass? All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? So the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results on this question being 11 yeas, 23 nays, 0 absent and not voting, less than a majority of those present and voting having voted in the affirmative. I declare the bill rejected. Further bills on third reading.
Engrossed Senate Bill 6